And we're back once again. We're at chapter 4 of 2 Kings, verse 13, where we're going to be reading. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, you have been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for you? Would you be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among my own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she has no child, and her husband is old. Notes: if the woman will suggest nothing herself, can Gehazi suggest anything? Verse 15, And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, you shall embrace a son. And she said, No, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto your handmaid. Notes. It sounds a bit like Sarah of the Old Testament. The woman was kind of iffy about this, if you would. Well, she just basically accused the guy of being a liar. She could not believe the good tidings and thought the prophet was only raising hopes to disappoint them. But she would find out that the Lord never deceives anyone. Verse 17. And the woman conceived and bore a son at that season that Elijah had said unto her according to the time of life. Notes: what a slap in the face that was to her, huh? Next verse, she's proven totally wrong. Verse 18. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, My head, my head. And he said to the lad, Carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died. Notes: some evidence points to a sunstroke of some kind. Verse 21. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door upon him and went out. Notes: apparently she reasoned that if the Lord through Elijah could give her the child, through Elisha the child could actually be raised from the dead. Verse 22. And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray you, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And he said, Wherefore will you go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It shall be well. Notes: well, evidently the father didn't know that the child had actually died. The wife not telling him shows that she believed the child would be raised from the dead, and thus chose not to dispel this matter to him. Verse 24. Then she saddled the ass, and said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Slack not your riding for me, except I bid you. Notes: in other words, she is going directly to the prophet, and she's going to plead her case before him. Verse 25. So she went and came into the man of God at Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Or Shunammite, I should say. Notes: well, evidently the prophet saw her at some distance, and no doubt he was quite shocked to see her. Verse 26. Run now, I pray you, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child? And she answered, It is well. Notes: you see right here, Elisha seemed to expect that something was wrong. Well, the woman's answer was, All is well, even though things weren't. That's what you call faith. Verse 27. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. And the Lord has hid it from me, and has not told me. Notes: you don't have to be Einstein or Sigmund Freud to tell that something was definitely wrong, but he didn't know exactly what. Gehazi, who represents religion, thrust her away, as religion usually does. But Elijah, who represents grace and God and holiness, says, Let her alone. It'd be kind of nice that somehow we would turn from Gehazi and start turning to people who are more like Elisha. The results would be, they would be absolutely wonderful. Verse 28. Then she said, Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Notes. In other words, her son was given to her by the Lord, and she did not expect that the Lord would actually take him away. Verse 29. Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up your loins, and take my staff in your hand, and go your way. If you meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute you, answer him not again. And lay my staff upon the face of the child. Notes. In other words, he's telling this guy to go ahead and get this done as quickly as you can. Verse 30. And the mother of the child said, As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. And he arose and followed her. Notes. She was not going to be satisfied with whatever the servant was to do. She wanted Elisha to go to where the child actually was, and understandably he actually did. We don't need a bunch of religious going around. Verse 31. And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child is not awaked. Notes. Now, we should question what purpose Elisha had in mind regarding the staff upon the child, but we aren't really actually told that. But perhaps we could say that it represented some kind of ceremony, which means that a dead staff laid upon a dead face cannot give life. Religious ceremonies, however scriptural, are paralyzed in the very presence of death. Religion has never set anyone free. Ceremony has never actually set anyone free as well. It is only the power of Christ made available to us through the cross and gives us the Holy Spirit that can actually bring about the necessary needed results and can actually bring us more life and bring it more abundantly. You can find that in John chapter 7 verses 37 up to about 39 to 40. And where are we? Verse 32. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore and shut the door upon the twain and prayed unto the Lord. Notes. Whenever he shuts the door and put them upon the, and it says the door upon the twain, he's basically putting up a do not disturb sign. Verse 34. And he went up and lay hold upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Notes. As strange as this actually sounds, evidently the Lord told him to do this. Verse 35. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Notes. It's my own personal opinion, but perhaps Elisha conducting himself as he did toward the dead child was meant to symbolize the fact that Jesus could not save mankind by passing a degree. He saved man by becoming one with man. You can find that in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. He also has saved us from sin by dying on the cross, which should be overwhelmingly obvious. Verse 36. And he called Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her, and when she was come in unto him, he said, Take up your son. Then she went in and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. Notes. One can only imagine the joy that filled this woman's heart at this particular time to know that her son was not only given by the Lord, but taken by the Lord and given back. Thus is the power of God. Life and death are little more than a plaything to him. 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 38 is where we'll have to pick up. Thank you, and God bless.